This slowing market is going to produce huge opportunities for you. Most realtors see the problem, but I want you to understand this. This is a writer downer. On the other side of the door of a problem is an opportunity. On the other side of the door of a problem, what most people see as a problem is an opportunity. That's what we're going to talk about today. And that's what we're really going to drill down in when we get to Orlando. Guys, Orlando is going to be one of the best conferences we have ever done. The time, the people working on this and the content is going to be, that's why we won't bring your whole team. You and your team will be blown away. We have completely changed the agenda, the speakers, what we're talking about, the whole approach is changed because of the market. So if you're like, well, I was at the last, no, this is not gonna be like the last conference or the conference before. This is, and we're gonna give you the details on what the approach needs to be. And it will totally make sense. When I lay this out for you today, at the end of it, you know what, he's right? Like what I'm doing or what I have been doing is not gonna make sense compared to the new, better approach that Craig and Todd are gonna show us here in Orlando, and we're gonna talk about here today. One of the things that's changed other than the economy. Okay, so what's going on in the economy? We know we have inflation at a 40-year high. Okay, so what happened there? Okay, the central banks all over the country, because of the pandemic, wanted to be very accommodating. Okay, basically they're printing money. As you know, they gave people money to not work, right? That's why we're having a hard time getting people to work, because the last couple of years, a lot of people got paid a lot of money, sometimes more, not to work than to work. Now we're paying the price, okay? The central banks, the governments around the world were afraid to have a recession during the pandemic. So all they did was they kicked the can down the road. That's all they did. And I guess that makes sense. I mean, you don't want to have a recession at the same time you're having a pandemic. So all they did was they printed money, they artificially lowered the interest rates, and now we're paying the price because we've got inflation at a 40-year high. Look at the price of gas. Look at the price of food, right? Every one of us is taking a pay cut, right? Because everything we buy is way more expensive, okay? And that goes for home buyers as well. Now, at the same time as so to combat the 40-year high inflation, the Federal Reserve, and in Canada, the Bank of Canada, they are aggressively raising the interest rates to try to fight inflation. Okay, so they're behind the curve. They're behind the curve. They should have started raising the interest rates earlier, but they didn't. Now, the Federal Reserve of the United States, the Bank of Canada, and central banks all around the world are trying to play catch up. In fact, I was reading yesterday, Todd, that I think it's later this week, the Federal Reserve is meeting, like in the next couple of days, and there's some talk that they're going to increase the interest rate by 3/4 of a point this week. That would be the single biggest rate hike we've had in, I don't know, 20 or 30 years. Okay, so you can plan, okay, you can plan on interest rates are going to go up aggressively. Now, what that means is the person that could barely buy a house before, because remember, at the same time, we have prices going up 40, 50%. In some marketplaces, home prices increased by 100% over the last 2 or 3 years. So where does that leave your buyer, right? The buyer's like, I can't afford. A combination of rapidly increasing house prices and rapidly increasing mortgage rates makes a house unaffordable. Let me give you an example. Let's say there was a buyer that could buy in my marketplace, let's say a couple months ago, they could afford to buy a home. They qualified to buy a home for $900,000. Well, in my market, Todd, you can barely buy a house for $900,000. Now that poor buyer can only qualify for $800,000. Now they're completely out of the marketplace. So your offers are going to change. Who you target's going to change. The next thing we want to talk about is the buyers and sellers today are different. Okay, they are different than the type of buyers and sellers we're used to working with. And I'll show you, we'll talk about that in a minute. But how many of you would agree that the prospects, the buyers and sellers actually behave differently? Todd, you and I were talking about your daughter, Morgan. before we got started. You said you can call Morgan all you want. What'd she do? She doesn't answer the phone. She sends you a text.
That's exactly right. I can call. It's like, then I just send her a text. Then she answers right away. And I'm like, I don't understand, but she doesn't understand me calling her. That's what's so weird.
Yeah, right? We're talking about millennials here, guys, and I'll show you a graph here in a minute. But that's another thing we're gonna talk about today. Is you're not going to change the way the millennials operate. We got to change to the way they want it. Let's put it this way: Todd's not going to change the way Morgan operates. If Todd wants to communicate with Morgan, he's got to change how he communicates. So Todd's like texting and whatever. So the good news is we're going to show you what to do about this.
So we will see you at the Craig Proctor Mega Systems for the Market Shift Conference, exclusively for you and your team members, July 28th, 29th, and 30th in Orlando, Florida.
Let's go serve big.